Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland. In this episode, we'll be reviewing the all-new F64-USB racing wheel from Ascher Racing. With up to 64 inputs and a solid dual-clutch setup, this looks to be a wheel that will be in high demand. Time to put it through the SRG's review process and see how it does. So, let's get to it. So let's take a closer look at this F64 USB wheel from Ascher Racing. First off, it is very similar as far as shape is concerned to the F28 wireless wheel that they actually produce. And I actually did a review on that one already, so you can go check that out if you're interested in the wireless solution. But this is the USB wheel. The first thing you'll notice about this wheel is, well, there's a lot of buttons on here. And actually it looks pretty busy, but personally I kind of like this look. And we have a brushed aluminum face on here as far as the plate's concerned. The plate on here is actually, I believe, a 5mm. Meant to have this sitting out here when I started this, but it's pretty close. So yeah, let's see what we got here. See if I can get this to where you guys can see it. And yep, there we go, right about there. And that is 5.14. All right, so 5mm, you know, give or take, you know, anytime you see a 5 or 4 or 3mm plate, it'll always be, you know, a tenth or so or a hundredth or so of a millimeter one way or the other. So nice solid 5mm plate. This is all the way through. The actual grips attached to that, and it comes down through this way, so the grips are actually wrapped around that nice 5mm. I tell you what, this is a very stiff wheel. It's one of those wheels. It's actually the same as the wireless wheel that they produce. Very, very stiff product. And of course we have in the one-piece aluminum housing on the back here contributes to that stiffness, of course. Right, so we've got a lot of buttons here. F64 means there's actually 64 different functions available on this wheel. All right, that's a lot of functions in anybody's book. And of course, all the buttons here are the same as the kind of buttons that were on the wireless wheel. They have a different push feel to them. You can't just, if you just lightly put your finger on there and press, nothing happens, which in my book is a good thing. You have to put some pressure on this for that button to work, which is good, because if you're going for something else and you brush across the button here, you don't want it to activate unless you obviously intentionally are making it activate. And there are plenty of wheels out there on the market that, yeah, you can actually do that to their buttons, because they're just not of a strong of a spring in them when you actually push them. And yeah, these are, yeah, I'm partial to these buttons now that I used it on the wireless wheel, because it's just one of those things that's an improvement that you always thought it'd be nice if they could improve upon it. And finally, we do have an improved button. Right. And of course, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons on each side of this wheel. Then we got these big dials here, which are, of course, rotaries, or selectors, if you will. And they have a nice tension to them. The friction feels good. It's light, but at the same time, the detents feel heavier than you would think by just handling the actual knob on here. And speaking of the knobs, these are aluminum anodized bits. Of course, it's a red and a blue. And you can see on the bottom back there how you take those off. They all have set screws in them. And we'll go ahead and go over to these knobs or dials while we're talking about the red. Now this actually came with the red up here, and I was messing around and just kind of switched them around. This is a 3-way rotary here. Of course, we have the clockwise and counterclockwise. It has a good sound to it, a nice crisp feel. Again, right along the lines with all of the Martin Ascher stuff. It's just very crisp, very good feel to it. And we also have a push button here. You can hear the dials. Very crisp, which promises to be able to just turn one little click there and not get two when you're just trying to get one. That's one of my pet peeves about some of these encoders out there in the world, or out there in the wild. Yeah, that they're just, you know, if you try to turn them one, they'll turn twice. You'll get two inputs because the detents are just so close. These tints are much closer than these selectors, obviously, right? And we can actually use these selectors in game, and we can actually program this in the configuration software that runs with this wheel. By the way, we do get a configuration application for this wheel to program or set some of the functions in the way we want to operate. We can actually make these dials be a momentary on when we turn it, or we can actually make the dial, when we turn it, cause a button to be like a constant press, like if you were constantly pressing a button, or flipping a switch up and leaving it there. So yeah, it's very nice as far as what we can program. And of course, we're going to have a complete segment on that configuration software and the operation of the wheel. Right. So we've got 2 down here. We've also have 2 up here with black knobs. And by the way, these knobs are very nice, as you might imagine. They have a very nice grip feel to them. There's knurled sections on them. And of course, the black ones up top are exactly the same. And you can see little set screws in those guys too. And again, the same as these on the bottom. So yeah, we have button presses, and of course we have a nice crisp sound to them. Yeah, sound, it actually can make a difference in the perceived quality in something. And then we have, my favorites are the joysticks, and we have 2. We got one on this side and one on this side, and there's 7 functions to each joystick. We can use it clockwise, counterclockwise, and I really like these. These have such a nice friction to them. Now the detents are very close. They're actually a little bit closer than they are on these rotaries. Very close, but still very defined. So there, you know that, and you can still get 2 when you're meant to get 1 here, but you really have to be kind of twisting at it to get that. If you're just turning it, it only goes 1 detent. Again, I really like these. Of course, we have the 4-way. It goes left or right, up or down, and we have a button push right there. Very nice indeed. So we got 14 inputs just on those 2 knobs alone. Right. What else do we want to see here? I think that's about it. Of course, we have the usual, meeting expectations here as far as the Martin Ascher product goes. We have a nice brushed finish on this aluminum front. We have stainless steel screws attaching the frame to the back housing, or the housing to the frame, however you want to look at it. And the grips are Alcantara. And again, these are the same grips that are on their wireless wheel. And it's actually 285 millimeters wide from end to end. I actually measured that. And again, very similar, or exactly the same, rather, as the wireless wheel that you can get. So I like these grips. Again, like I said in the other review, the way they're shaped and formed, they remind me of the F1 wheel for Fanatic's shape and the way they kind of feel. But these have a little bit of a different feel to them. And of course, being wider than the Fanatic wheel obviously makes it feel different when you have it in hand. And yeah, but just very stiff. The first thing I do when I get a wheel, I want to twist it and see how much flex it has in it. And I just can't perceive any in this one. And I really kind of expected that because of the other wheel that I did the review on. Now let's go take a look on the back. This is the anodized back plate that I've already got my oily fingerprints all over. I'm trying to wipe that off for you so you don't have to see that. All right, there we go. And again, this actually has a brushed finish to it, but it's really hard to see it. I don't think you're going to be able to see it in the lights. You might be able to. I have to check the video once the recording's done. And so it's kind of a brush, but it is a higher gloss finish on the back. And again, beautiful all the way around. Just impeccable quality here, as usual, from Ascher Racing. Nice bevels here that are rounded off. Just all the edges everywhere. And the bevels continue on. You can see right there, all the way around here. Just a beautiful piece to look at. Yes, it's just, God, he just does such great work. And we have a connector here. Now this connector is, first I thought it was a Lumberg connector, but this brand is actually Binder, and that's where we're going to be connecting the USB cable to, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The shifters, again, are the new Ascher shifters that we found on the wireless wheel, and these are magnetic units that have switches on them. I don't see the actual switch where we're actually hitting a switch, but yes. Oh, there it is. I can see it now. So it's really hard to see it. It's buried deep in the housing there. But these are all aluminum bits, right? The aluminum housing, and we have an aluminum paddle. It's also got the nice chamfering or bevels on it. So obviously it feels smooth when you put your finger across it. Yeah, just very crisp shifter. I like the pressure on these shifters. Yeah, it's just one of those things that when you pick it up and feel it right away, you feel comfortable and at home with it, I think. And we have on this wheel that we don't have on the wireless wheel are the clutch paddles, or analog input paddles. They can be used for a clutch, dual clutch type thing, where you do the bite point, you let one go, and then you let the other go, just like in an F1 car, or other cars too. And you can also use it for a brake and a throttle if you like. You can actually, in the configuration software, we can make that a throttle and then make this a brake if you want, or vice versa, whichever way you want to go with it. And I might experiment with that a little bit, but it's kind of self-explanatory. If you want to use it for a throttle and brake, you can. So that's really what we need to know. Will it do it or won't it do it? So yeah, again, all this aluminum housing here is just so well done. The details, you know, are just always outstanding on an Ascher product, it seems. He does such great work. And yeah, we can see the springs in there for the analog paddles. Just really nice stuff. As you guys can see, it's pretty gorgeous. And we have the logo telling us what this is, a F64-USB wheel, serial number, and who it's from. Right. Anything else we want to talk about? Well, we'll talk about the cable that came with this. Now, this cable is actually a new cable from Ascher Racing. The cable that came before it was it was a bit thinner. It wasn't as heavy feeling and as tight of a spring to it as this one is. Of course, being a thicker cable, you would think that, yeah, it would be a little bit tighter as far as the spring elasticity on this. So yeah, very nicely done. Now this actually is a shielded cable from end to end, and the shield on this end obviously has been terminated in the actual connector itself. And over here the same way in the wheel. Let's turn that around where the connector is. So yeah, that's the way it's wired inside. And we have a USB-A interface, obviously, so we can put it in our PC, right? Which I'm going to end up changing eventually to a Lumberg connector, because that's how I connect things to my rig. And yeah, the very nice connector here is, again, carrying on the theme with all things Ascher Racing. Nice knurl bits here. Just a very substantial feeling connector. Yeah, it doesn't feel lightweight at all like my Lumberg connector does. This is, you know, very stout piece of equipment here. Right. And yeah, we have a nice long cable. It's actually, I haven't stretched it all the way out to see how long it is, but you can see just with the coils alone, it's much longer than the 285 millimeter wheel here, just resting. And yeah, it'll go way out like that. So yeah, plenty of cable there for wrapping around the wheel. And yeah, I've never had a problem with an Ascher cable, and this is just what he felt like he wanted to upgrade the cables to, or move forward with in the process of when he was making these new wheels. Right. And of course the wireless wheel, we didn't see one because we don't get one. What else do we get? Well, we get some nice decals. And this is some heavy vinyl here. I'm not sure how he's printing this, or what the millimeters are rather on these. But you can see you get a nice white clean one with nothing on it. But no, actually there's, I don't know, because of the lights here, I don't know how well that's going to show up. But it's the same thing we're seeing on the black piece, but in a white clear background. So this is black with a clear background. So we can actually put this on any of the buttons we want to put them on. And, you know, white would probably be better on the black. Obviously, we wouldn't see it too well if it was on a black button. And then you can put the black ones on the lighter colored buttons rather. So yeah, nice to have some decals to put on. I typically don't put decals on my wheels because I change things around on them a lot when I'm driving different cars. Maybe someday I will when I'm just driving one car for a while. But yeah, I usually don't use these. But it's nice to have them there if you do want to put labels on your buttons. And we also get this cool sheet. Now this is for the dials, or your encoders. So these will actually fit around all these encoders here, these 4 encoders, right? So you can pick out the color you want depending on, well, your fancy, I suppose, which one you like. We've got purple, green, red, and black, yellow, and clear. There's actually a clear in here. I don't think that's a white. Is it a white? No, that's a white. Okay. It's not clear on the back. So that's a white one. And of course, they're all for, you know, they all have the same thing. They start out with brake balance, traction control, ABS, dash, menus, things like that. ARB differential. So you can, actually there's plenty in here, and actually there's an empty one on the very bottom. You see that there. Doesn't have anything filled in there. So you can actually pencil something in if you want, if it's not covered in this list that we have here. Very nice, well thought out actually. You know, it's the little things like this that just, you know, make things stand out from some of the other products that we get in here at the SRG. But then again, we're talking about an Ascher Racing wheel here. So this thing is just gorgeous, and it's heavy duty, industrial, and beautiful at the same time. And it weighs in actually at 2 pounds and 8 ounces, or 1,140 grams, 1.140 kilos. So not too heavy actually. 2 pounds, 8 ounces, you know, that's 2.5 pounds. It's, of course, once we get a quick release on there, it's going to weigh more. And yeah, so speaking of quick releases, on the back here, this thing is a fingerprint magnet, it seems like. Or either that or I'm sweating and my oil in my fingers is coming out too much. But anyway, you can see that these are actually, a little pointer here, threaded. All right, so we've got in a 70 millimeter pattern here, PCD as they call it. And of course they're all threaded. So if I'm going to put a regular quick release on here, and we'll get to more details of that in the mounting, then I'm going to use screws and just put my quick release like this one that doesn't have any threads in it. It's just a hole. And then I would just use regular screws that actually come with the kit, we'll see those in a minute, to put this on. And those would be these screws. So these are some stainless steel M5 screws that come in the kit, typical of Ascher. We got some nice washers, matching washers there. So we would use this to attach this kind of a quick release. Now some quick releases don't have just a hole, they actually have threads themselves. And this is the very nice HRS quick release wheel side adapter. And you can see in here, we actually have some threads. All right. So these are all threaded holes, which is very nice actually. I like that they do it that way. But now we have threaded holes going to threaded holes in the back, and that does create a bit of a issue because it's hard to get these things synced up with the threads. So once the thread goes through here, yeah, and then starting into the other thread, it is not easy to get that to work right because it'll be off. The threads just won't mesh on the next surface that we actually have threads on. So to alleviate that, it includes these, what they call captive screws. All right. And a captive screw is, and if you guys ever use cameras or any of that stuff, you're very familiar with this. The screw has a smooth shaft on it right there. All right. And then we have a threaded end over here. So once we thread this through something like this adapter, and it'll actually be free, it'll have some play. So then we can continue to screw it into whatever we're trying to get on the other side attached. Right? So very nice that he's gone the extra mile here and included this solution. Now also there's another solution for if you have like one of those AccuForce or something like that where you have to mount from the inside of that wheel side quick release. In other words, you have to go inside to attach it to the wheel. There's no other way to do it. And so you can actually use these, and we'll see that once we get to the look inside and talk about the mounting again, how this works out. But yeah, very nice that he worked this out. And these are nice stainless steel units, M5. Yeah, very nice indeed. So what else we got? We also have a little tool in here that I'll talk about later when we get to that point, as far as when we do the actual look inside, which, you know, is going to be next probably. And yeah, I think that's it. That's all we want to talk about for the closer look. Again, as you might imagine, top flight wheel here, top of the line, just, yeah, you know, there's nothing, I haven't seen anything better than this. Now there might be some stuff that's on par with this kind of a wheel, but yeah, this is just one of those things. As soon as you get it in hand out of the box, you are happy you spent your money on it. Right, so what we'll do next is go ahead and start taking this apart and have our look inside segment. Time for our look inside segment. One of my favorite segments that I do. Right, so we have some screws we're going to have to take off the front plate to be able to separate these two halves. And these are 2.5 millimeter flathead screws, and they're stainless steel units. Very nice. I know some guys actually have made comments that they didn't like the silver on black contrast. I kind of like it, but you can always get some black ones and put in there if you don't like it. Pretty simple. I mean, they're just 5 millimeter screws. I believe they're 5 mil. It might be 4s. Anyway, this is a 2.5 millimeter hex on this, and we'll be using our 2.5 millimeter wrench to get them off. And I'll speed this up so you guys don't have to suffer through this. So I wanted to show you guys these little screws here. Again, stainless steel flathead units. And of course they're counter beveled there, so they fit the counter bores on those actual holes. Alright, they're all in safely in the magnetic dish. Now we have another thing we have to do here. The way this binder connector system works, there's actually a lock ring around this that's I'm not saying help holding this on, but it is holding it on because this actual connector is soldered to the circuit board in here. So I'm going to have to take that off. Now, fortunately, because we may have to get inside of this wheel to mount a quick release, and I'll demonstrate that in the mounting section, but I'm going to actually demonstrate a little bit here after we do the look inside it's finished. But yeah, because we might have to mount from the inside these screws, Ascher Racing was kind enough to include this guy. Let's get there we go. And you can see the little teeth in it there. And that will actually match the little grooves. I don't know if you can see that the first time, but there's these little grooves in here that it allows this wrench to fit in here and us to take it off. All right, you see one there? We got one on both sides. The other one's over there. So all we do is we take this little wrench and we line up the teeth that we already saw in those grooves. And very carefully, you don't want to rush this, you want to take your time, because if you don't do this right and get these teeth in here, it's easy for this to slip out. And if you slip out, the sharp edge of that tool is going to leave a very nasty scratch in your black anodization on the back of this beautiful plate. So you don't want to rush this. You want to take your time, be very careful of what you're doing. You're going to turn it in a counterclockwise direction as normal on a right-hand thread to get this off. So I'm going to try to do this without scratching it myself. And once it's sitting there, just take both of your, just kind of pinch it. I put a little weight down on it, not a whole lot of weight, but just enough weight to try to keep that wrench from popping out. Or, yeah, and then just kind of, there it goes. Now once you have it loose, you've broken it loose, you don't need this anymore. Now we can actually just take this ring with your fingers and take it off. See, it unscrews. Just like that. Now the back plate is free to come off. But before we do that, we'll take one more close look at this ring here. All right, see the little grooves there? All right. Again, this is not hard to do, but I can't stress enough that, you know, it only takes one slip and there's no going back. You're going to have a nice scratch on your beautiful wheel now. It's going to break your heart, trust me, if you do that. So be careful. Right, now this whole thing should come off. But because we have these shifters and these clutch paddles on here, more than likely we're going to have wires in here, right? And they're going to be connected to a board or plugged in somewhere. So I'm going to very carefully, as I usually do on my videos, is remove the back plate and kind of rotate it or tilt it looking for wires. And I'm going to do it in front of the camera so you guys can see it, hopefully. And as we pull this up, we can see the buttons. And yep, sure enough, there they are. So this is where we got to be careful and not put a lot of stress on these, because these wires are plugged into the board there. Now, I'm going to lay this down on the bench and very carefully take these plugs off. Now you want to remember which ones went where. So you might want to look up under here and kind of trace it and remember, or even take your phone. Sometimes I'll take a phone if there's a lot of wires, and I'll take a picture of them just to make sure that they go back on the way I took them off. Right. So now it's just a matter of getting in here and very carefully, I usually get my thumbnail and kind of get it in the groove. Let's see if you guys can see that. See how it's kind of separating? You can see the pins right there. I'm just going to get my fingernail in there and kind of shove it off. It's not easy to show this and do it at the same time, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So I'm just going to push it off, and there it goes. All right, and do the same thing for the other one. And once you get it loose, you can kind of wiggle it. That's what I like to do, is kind of just give it a nice gentle wiggle and tug, and it'll come off. And the same thing on the other side for your other clutch and shifter. There we go. Now we should be free. Make sure you don't hang on the board as you're pulling away from it. And there we have the back cover. And I have to, you know, the little things stick out to me, obviously, because I like the details in things when I'm actually looking at them. And actually, the wires that we're using here, or that Ascher's Racing, I'm not using them, are the silicone type of wire. Now, if you guys have done any soldering electronics or hobbies or whatever, you know the silicone wires are the better wires than the regular hard plastic coated ones. The silicones actually withstand soldering temperatures better, and they're just more flexible. They're just better wires, better quality. And yeah, so that's what's being used here, as you would imagine. So yeah, we got some nice quality silicone wires here, and yeah, it's just a very nice machining done in this plate inside. You can see where there's actually some reinforcements left in to this. Let's see if we can get you the light doesn't blow it out there. You can see how they've left some reinforced patches in here where they could. We also have the actual screw holes that we're actually screwing things into are all reinforced. And this little piece here is actually reinforcing that screw hole. Here we have kind of a standoff thing going on. You can see how they're standing up, or let's see, that's the best way to look at that. So you can see how these are raised up. So that just reinforces these threads that were put into this cover. So yeah, I like the way that was put into the design. Very nicely done. Yeah, just, you know, like I said, I keep saying it, you know, Ascher stuff is just top flight, top shelf stuff. Yeah. So now that we got this safely off, let's see what else we got. And we'll get back to this in a minute about that quick release stuff. Right. Not much to see here, actually, because it's the back part of the PCB or circuit board. And it also has the Ascher Racing V10 on there, F64. And you can see, again, professionally done, just everywhere you look here. And we can see how these buttons and switches are actually attached to the board. Right there, everything's soldered to one board. Again, a very nice design, very compact. It doesn't take up as much space. Imagine trying to wire all these together. Yeah, that'd be a nightmare. Not only that, all the wires you would have. So you really need a circuit board for this kind of thing. Yes, very nicely done. So you guys can see through it there. Yeah, just the standard stuff. And everything's labeled. I mean, where the plugs go, if you ever do lose your way on the plugs, if you know about where the ground and where the signals and ground and voltage connections are, you should be able to find your way home, as it were, on this board. Very nice. I could take this off, but then I'd have to take all of these button covers off where these little set screws are, and then we could pull the whole board off. But yeah, I really don't see any really need to do that at this minute. Right. So yeah, not much to see past that, right? So here, I want to get back to this for a second because I already have it off. I'm not going to need to do this with the quick releases I'm using, but you may need to do that. If, again, I think the AccuForce quick release wheel side of that quick release, as you see here, I'll show you a little video of it. Yeah, that has threaded holes in it that there's really only one way to attach your wheel, and that's putting the wheel on that and then running some threads. Now, if it's just a regular steering wheel, no big deal, right? It's just a flat plate going up against there, and you just screw some screws in, you're done. But if you're inside of an internal wheel, this has got to go back on, right? So it makes it a little bit more complicated. Right. So that's where these, again, these screws I showed you in the closer look, these are called captive screws. If you ever use camera equipment and you've ever put a little, one of those quick release plates on the bottom of your camera, then you know the same kind of principle applies. It has a non-threaded shaft here and threads on the other side. And I believe this is a 3 mil, or is it a 4 mil? Let's see. Yeah, that's a 4 mil. So this is a 4 mil socket head cap on the other side. So what we'd have to do is, and I'm going to use this HRS as an example. Now on the HRS, we don't have to do that because we have access to the other side of it. On the AccuForce, this is all covered with a quick release mechanism, so we can't do it. So we're going to have to put the quick release up against the back of the plate here and put our screw in this way. And just to do a quick example here, I'm just going to run this in with my finger. And once the threads clear the threaded part of that hole, it's just going to kind of flop around. There it is. See? Now we've got the threads in the back, just like I said, on those quick releases for the camera, if you ever use that on a tripod or something. So you can see some of that shaft is sticking up between there. Just kind of be loose in there. Now we can actually turn this so it will sync up with the threads on this. If you didn't have that function and I tried to run this screw through this hole, it would go through fine. But once it got to the other side, I can't really change where the start of that thread is as it meets the other threaded hole, or the threads in the other hole. And that causes problems. Yeah, you just can't sync it up. Maybe you get lucky and you sync one of them up, but yeah, more than likely you're not going to be able to sync it up. So using a screw like this, these captive screws, allows us the luxury of being able to put it from the inside, and then I can just put this up here and start the screw. Let me go ahead and do this very carefully. I don't want to scratch anything. Yes, we are in scratch avoidance mode. And once it starts the threads there, then we can just go ahead and run it down and snug it up, and it'll be tight for us. All right, like that. Now you can see the threads coming out the back right here, and they're standing a little proud. So that's why we have these screws in here. I am, again, not going to need that function because obviously I have a way to get to these threads from the other side, so I can put this wheel plate back on and never take it off again, because now I can do the same thing I was doing inside to this. Even though the holes are threaded, I'm just going to put them in from the other side like so, right? And this is actually an 8mm thick aluminum plate here that HRS uses on their quick release. So now you can see it's jiggling around. It's kind of hanging down there. You see the gap. So now I'm free to start the threads on the back of this plate here anywhere I want, because I can actually free to turn it. Very clever, actually, to put these in here. First time I've seen this. Otherwise, we would have had a bit of an issue. Now, here's the thing. The only reason we have this issue, obviously, is because these new wheelbase or wheels. I'm not sure if the button plate. I've never seen a button plate up close, but I'm assuming they have the threads in them too, maybe. So, but this is very cool though, because now we can thread a quick release like this that just has holes in it on the back of here with no problem. Just throw some screws in there and you're done. Where before it was a screw with a washer, and then we go on the other side if we could, and we have to put a nut on the other side and a washer, and then tighten everything down to get our quick release on here. So now being threaded makes it much easier. But again, at the same time, it introduces some other issues that have to be addressed. And that's just the way it is in the world, isn't it? We cure one problem and we create another one when we cure that problem. Right. And it's not really a problem. It's just, how you have to approach getting the job done. Right. Anything else? I think that's it. I think we covered everything. Again, what can you say? Ascher Racing does it again with just, like I said, their design, everything is just so tight. So well done. The tolerance is so tight on everything. Yeah. Anyway, what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and mount my quick release that I'm going to be using on this. And then what we're going to do is get it on the mount, or on the rig rather, and go through the software. In fact, I might not even get on the rig to go through the software that comes, the configuration utility basically is what it is. And yeah, we'll get everything put back together, and then we'll come back and address that configuration utility and look at what it is capable of doing for us. I wanted to show you guys the dual clutch function on this wheel because it's actually unique to anything I've had in the SRG so far. And that is, we actually have the usual dial where we dial in the bite point on the car when we're sitting in the car and testing it. And we also have another one. So we have two buttons here. We got these two 7-way switches we're going to use here. One of them will do the usual adjustments, which is 1% increments. And I'm going to show you some DI view stuff here in a second to demonstrate it, to dial in that bite point. And the bite point, for those of you who don't know, when you're using dual clutches, and that's these paddles back here, analog paddles, we have one, it's a bite point. In my case, it's the right side one, which is your left. And you just kind of let that go like that. And that's going to add clutch, or the maximum amount of torque we can put to the rear wheels without breaking loose and spinning them. And then we use the other clutch, like a motorcycle clutch, and just do like we normally do on a clutch and let it out. So we get the rest of the clutch engaged and off we go. This without spinning wheels. Now, you can do that with just one clutch, obviously. But with the paddle clutches, you do it the same way every single time. You just let go of that bite point, and every single time you snap that open, you're going to get rolling without spinning your wheels. Whereas if you just use a single clutch, you can get that done, but it's not as easy to do it consistently because of the long travel of the clutch pedal and you remembering from muscle memory where that bite point is where you want it to be. But here, we have a paddle to take care of it for us, right? So it's going to make you a little bit quicker on the standing starts. So we have a 1% increment adjustment, and we have a 0.1% adjustment over here. So 1% and 0.1%. This is going to let us dial it in even more precisely than I had before, because I've always felt like, you know, you go a little bit more and you start spinning your wheels. You back off a little bit and you're not spinning your wheels, but you don't feel like you're getting the full launch. So it's, hopefully this is going to take care of that. And it's nice to see new things come out to allow us to fine tune something like that. Right, so what I'm going to do is, first off, to get this initiated, we're in the car, and we're going to press both of these seven-way buttons here, and until this red LED lights up, and then we'll be in calibration mode. So we're going to see if this works. Hold it down. There it is. Good. So far, so good. So now it's working, and I'm going to show you in DI view, I'm going to superimpose it over there, that when I pull both these clutches in, like so, then I let out the bite point, and you can see it's sitting at 55.5%. If you look in that middle number down there. So that's great. Let's say that's the bite point I want, but it's just spinning a little bit, and I'm going to have to come around the front here and take that down a percentage point. So if I turn this one counterclockwise, it should take me back down. Remember, you're going to have the bite point, or rather not the bite point, but the slave clutch pressed down when you're doing this, which is the left one in my case, right one in yours. And then I'm going to turn this down one click, and that should go from 55 to 54. And there it is. 54.4, 54.5, something like that. It's kind of blinking in between. That's what DI view does. So let's say, okay, now I'm not spinning the wheels anymore, but I just feel like I need a little bit more bite further up and to get it to be maximized before I start spinning my wheels. And this is the beauty of this 10th% adjustment wheel. Now I can turn that, let's say I turn it clockwise, that should take me up to, I'm bouncing around here a little bit, between 4 and 5 it looks like, so I should be bouncing between 5 and 6 if I click this once. And there it is, yep, 5, 9, 6, yeah, so we're bouncing between 5 and 6 now. One more click, that would get me to 6 and 7, and there it is. I don't know how well this is going to show up in the video, but that's what I'm trying to show you. So that's very cool. We can fine tune it that way. Not only that, but he's also got the programming in here to where when we let go of that bite point, I'm going to demonstrate this. You'll see how fast that bite point goes. And in fact, if you see how far I'm letting this paddle out, I don't know. Okay, see if I can go there and watch the arrow at the same time. You can see it travels. That arrow is traveling a long way for a little bit of release pressure or distance on this paddle itself until the bite point. You can see I'm actually reaching the bite point right there, but I still have some movement in the paddle left, that much. All right, so now I'm going to let go of the other clutch paddle over here, and you can see it's actually moving all the way to the end. But the amount I'm moving that paddle, it doesn't travel very far for the amount that I'm moving it. So the bite point clutch over here is faster. So that gives us a very fast release. 20 milliseconds to go from nothing right here. Well, let me grab this one. Nothing right here to the bite point, 20 milliseconds. So that's pretty darn fast. So again, it's just a performance enhancement to what we're trying to do here with these dual clutches. I really like the way this is set up. And then once we're done, let's say I'm happy with what I have. I'll just press the buttons again for a second while I'm in the car, and the light should go out. There it goes. And now I'm all set up, and I should be good to go from here on out. So again, just want to show you guys this feature that I've never seen before. Some other wheels might have it, but I've never seen it. And yeah, hats off to Ascher Racing for coming up with something a little bit different to allow us to improve our starts even further than we used to with the dual clutch system. All right, so now we have our F64 steering wheel securely mounted to our very nice Simucube 2 Pro wheelbase. I tested the F28 on the same wheelbase, so I thought it was fitting to test it on this one. And we have it in a bracket for the Simucube 2 Pro because we're running on a next level cockpit here, the GT track, because we're testing out some other stuff. Anyway, so yeah, looking good there. Now all we have to do is get in and drive this and see just how much like, or unlike for that matter, it is to the F28 wheel. So here we are in the Ascher Racing F64 configuration tool, and this is version 1.7. Right, so device details. First we'll see a serial number in here, and apparently my wheel is the number 28 wheel. And we also see manufacturer Leo Bodner. Well, that's for the USB conversion board from Leo that is internal to the wheel that we already saw. If you saw the look inside, product is Ascher Racing F64 and version is 1.8. Right, let's go down to the analog input mode. Now right now I'm in dual clutch mode, and I can actually move the paddles. I'll bring both paddles in. If you'll watch the X-axis down here, you can see that it fills up when I pull both paddles in. I let the master out, which is the bite point clutch on the right hand side. You can see it stops there, and then I can slowly let it out to start the car and go down the track. So if we want to calibrate that, we have to be actually not in dual clutch mode. We'd have to be in actual throttle and brake mode, which we're going to look at now. Now remember, that was just the X-axis when we have it in clutch mode. When we have it in throttle and brake mode, the programming splits this in the analog paddles into two. So now we have the X-axis still on top, but now we have the bottom Y-axis also separated. So now we have throttle and brake if we want it. And here's where I would calibrate both the dual clutch and the throttle. Now say I wanted the throttle to be on my Y-axis down here, which is my right pedal, analog paddle down here. And yeah, I can pull that in, and as soon as I start to pull it in, yeah, it's engaging, or actually engages right about, yeah, 700 or so. Let's say that I want to use this as my throttle, but I want some dead zone in the first part, so I don't have to let it all the way out when I'm using it. I can just let it out a little bit to get zero throttle. And yeah, let's just say I want to put a dead zone in it. So what I would do is go over there and hold it, and then hit the calibrate button. Well, I'd calibrate button first. Yeah, there we go. Set low, and I'll pull it in to where I want that dead zone to be. Wherever I feel like I want that to be. So I'm just pulling that in about maybe the quarter of the way I can go. Well, looks like more than that up there. So let's go ahead and set it right about there. Right. And now I'm going to set the high point. I'm going to bring it all the way in and set the high point. So now when I bring this in, I'm bringing it in a bit before I'm getting, you can see now the number was like, well, maybe it still is 7. No, it's more like 17 now, right? So remember, it was 700 before, somewhere around there. So now we're like 1700 or so. Yeah. So that puts the dead zone in the paddle for me. But let's say I don't want to use a clutch, or rather the throttle and brake, and I want to calibrate my dual clutch mode. Then I would actually go up to the Y-axis and calibrate that one with my left-hand paddle, which I have selected, and we'll get to that in a second, as my slave clutch paddle. And I would pull that in, and you can see it goes all the way across. Let's say I want to calibrate it. I would hit calibrate. It says set the low point, and I'm just going to leave that wide open for the low point, even though I could bring it in a bit for the low point, so it engages fully a little bit sooner than the actual dead stop that's mechanically in this paddle. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it all the way because that's the way I want it. I'll set the low, and then I'll set high by pulling it all the way in, set high, and now I want to go back up to the analog input mode and change it to dual clutch. So now I pull in both paddles. The Y-axis is no longer active down there, right? So now it's just the X-axis again because it's dual clutch. I can pull this one in, and you can see how far the bar goes on that. It's at like 38,000, and I pull the other one in, and it goes out to 65. So that's going to be my bite point, right? And then, of course, we let the left out to go on down the track. Now, this is where the next field is where we can actually change that master clutch right or left. So I can select left and make that my master if that's the way I want to set it up. But I want mine on right because that means that the final paddle that I'm letting out is on the left-hand side. And yeah, I ride a motorcycle, so that's very intuitive for me because the clutch is on the left-hand side of our motorcycle handlebars. So I'm going to leave it at the right, but you could change it to left for whatever reasons. Now, clutch bite point, we can actually set it here with a slider. And this also gives me an opportunity to show you the movement here that we're getting, the precise movement we get with the tenth percents and full percents rather, when we're adjusting the clutch. And right now it's 56.8. And what I'm going to do here is put the wheel in programming mode for the bite point. And that's holding the 7 ways just like we saw before. If you saw the DI view demonstration, just hold them down. You got to hit them at the exact same time till the red light comes on. And there we have it. Red light's on, I'm in programming mode. Now, we'll go back up here and watch this 56.8%. If I turn the left 7-way up or down, it's a full percentage point that it's going down. Right? If I go to the right one, then we get tenths of percent. So we can precisely dial it in. Again, just another demonstration showing that. And we're going to use this again once we get in game so that we can set up our bite point on an open wheel car and see how all that works. Now that I set it where I want it, of course, I would just press simultaneously, again, both of these 7-way switches, rather, or whatever you want to call them, 7-way switch, and wait for my red light to go out, and then I'm ready to go. Right, so we're all set up. Now, rotary encoder switch mode. This is kind of cool. This is where we have our bottom encoders, the red one and the blue one. We can make them 12 positions. We can make an encoder. Typically, I use encoder, though. But if I needed a reason to make this let's go ahead and go with the right encoder or rotary. I can actually choose 12-way rotary or 12-way rotary pulsed. 12-way rotary is just going to be like pressing a button. You see how the 47 came on when I chose that? If I go to pulse, it goes off. Right, so that's like I'm in a position right now on 6 on my dial, and that pushes 47 and holds it down. It's like turning a switch on in a car and leaving it there. So as I turn this, obviously we're going to go to different positions and different settings. And that's full on all the time. So if I go to 12-way rotary for the pulsed, then it's not on until I make a turn. You can see I'm turning it there, and as I turn it, it'll flash. Now sometimes I'll turn this, but it doesn't flash in the configuration tool. But not to be concerned, it doesn't do that in game. It's only the configuration tool. I'm not sure why that is, but yeah, most of the time it does. If I'm going back and forth, you can see it flashing. But sometimes I'm going back and forth and it doesn't. But yeah, not to be concerned because in game, it doesn't ever fail. So I'm not sure why the configuration tool does it. And over here, I'm still in encoder mode. And you can see if I do the encoder, that just flashes back and forth on 2 different button positions. And that's, like I said, typically that's how I use my selectors, unless I have a reason to do it otherwise. Very cool that we can actually change that, though. Nice feature. The encoder pulse width, again, we're talking about the encoders here, and that makes the, let's see if we can actually see the difference. I'm not sure if we'll be able to, but I'm going to go all the way, 56 is default. I'm going to go to 16 and see if it flashes. I'm going to use the right one any faster. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it actually is fast. It's doing it so fast that it's hard for the configurator to pick it up. All right, so I'm going to go all the way down to 200. Let's change it to 200 milliseconds. And then we'll switch it then, and yeah, it catches it every time now when we have a longer pulse width. Again, even though when I was at the default of 56, it missed it sometimes because of the pulse speed, I suppose, in the configurator though. But in game, it picks it up no problem. I'm going to go ahead, because I've been using it this way for a while, I'm just going to go back to 56, or not 48, 56, there we go, in the default configuration. And, of course, last but not least, we have the inputs up here that will show us, obviously, when we're hitting our buttons and make sure everything's working well. And you can just go through your buttons here and test everything and make sure all of them are working and see which number is actually related to what button. There's our 7 ways, which we can go left, we can go right, left, right, up, down, turn, backwards and forth. I love these 7 ways, man. They're just awesome. Yeah, I wish every wheel had that. And of course, more buttons, right? And we also have these encoders here, and they are also push buttons, and the black ones on the top. So yeah, just go through and make sure everything works. And of course, being an Ascher Racer, I wouldn't expect it not to work. And not last, but not least rather, we have the shifters. Kind of loud shifters. All right, so there you have it. In a nutshell, the Ascher Racing F64 configuration tool. Very cool that we actually have this tool that we can change the way this wheel operates a little bit. Yeah, I was surprised to find out that they actually had one, that they came up with that, and pleased and surprised at the same time, actually. But yeah, very cool stuff. So here we are in iRacing at Sebring in the Renault 3.5 Formula car. And I just wanted to show, I'm going to be driving a GT car too with this same wheel. It's kind of a dual wheel, a dual use wheel for me anyway, because it's 285 millimeters. It's right at the cusp or the limit that I would want to use in a GT car. And yeah, so I think it translates pretty well between the two types of vehicles. And that's important, I think, if you're going to spend this kind of money on a wheel. You'd like to be able to use it in as many cars as you want to without feeling out of sorts when you're using it. So yeah, I think it performs that role quite well. Anything between 285 and like 310 is the limit, I think, to be able to do that. So yeah, here we are. As you can see, this is a very bumpy track, and yeah, all these, the force feedback that this SE2 Pro can produce, all the details are definitely coming cleanly through to my hands, because it's a very, very stiff steering wheel. There's no doubt about it. This thing is stiff. It's got to be the stiffest wheel I've ever used. And here we are in the Ferrari 488 GT3 at the Ring, of course, another favorite track of mine. And yeah, again, in a GT car, this feels right at home to me. I mean, it could be a little wider maybe, but yeah, you know, it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you get lost and you're driving the car, and you really don't pay attention to it that much. Anyway, so yeah, I just want to show you a couple examples of driving it here, again, in the GT car. Just a great wheel to use. All the buttons are within easy reach, I think, except for maybe the yellow ones. They're a little bit a little bit of a reach for my thumb, but not that, obviously, that big of a deal. I'm trying to find things that I can say, you know, that I'm not totally pleased with here with this wheel, and it's hard. Maybe the loud shifters, yeah, those aluminum shifters, aluminum paddles are kind of loud, and all aluminum like that, they can wear on your fingertips a little bit in long sessions. I actually took some Martin Ascher carbon fiber formula type paddles that I had laying around and put them in place of the aluminum, and I actually like that a lot better. Kind of dampens it a little bit and makes it feel pretty good. Anyway, so that's about it for the driving section. Really not much else to see here. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and get over to the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the new F64 USB wheel from Ascher Racing. Whenever I get a piece of hardware from Martin, I expect to receive a top-shelf polished product. And the F64 is exactly that. The fit and finish on this wheel is top flight everywhere I looked. Attention to detail is what Ascher Racing products are known for, and the F64 maintains this expectation quite nicely. The buttons on this wheel have a nice stiff feel to them, and you have to really give them a good press with purpose to activate it, which to me is a good thing. Now you don't have to worry about accidentally activating a switch on this wheel. The 7-way joysticks are, as usual, a treat to use. They have nice tactile feel to all of their movements, and the 4 rotary switches are also on par with the 7 ways when it comes to tactile feel, and gives the user a sense of continuity with the rest of the F64's controls. The 2 12-way rotary switches are also top-flight units that have a nice detent spacing and feel. Now, the shifters on the F64 are the same ones used on the F28SC wireless wheel that I reviewed a while back. They offer a very crisp, firm, and tactile feel when activated, and it's very easy to tell that you have certainly made a shift. Now, they are rather loud, so keep that in mind if you race in close proximity to someone trying to sleep. The dual clutch feature on this wheel is something that I personally really like to have, as I do some races with standing starts in them, allowing you to dial in a constant no-spin start for these types of events. Now, setting up the bite point on the F64 couldn't be easier, and the fact that you can adjust the bite point in a full percentage point increments as well as points in a tenth of a percentage point make it easier to dial it in where you want it. The bite point engages in less than 20 milliseconds, so you won't have the delay that is present in some other dual clutch solutions out there. Another bonus with the F64 is the configuration software that is included here. Easy to use, and with some great options to help get your wheel set up to your own personal taste. Overall, the F64 USB wheel has met the very lofty expectation levels I had for it, and should be on your short list of wheels if you're in the market for one. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.